We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Welcome to Mostly Horror.
Mostly.
I'm Steve.
And I am Sean.
We got another episode this week with Mick Davis, the
dude.
director, writer and director of the film Walden. But before we get to that, we got some stuff to talk about. I actually didn't tell you I was going to say this, Sean, but I have to do a little story time with Steve at the very beginning here.
Okay.
Sydney and I were going to get massages last weekend, and something happened. We just very much needed it. As you, I'm sure, feel the same way.
Oh yeah.
And
need it bad.
And didn't do it for whatever reason. We pushed the dates, and it was Thursday, yesterday, that we wanted to get them, and so we both go after work to get massages. And I have only ever gotten a massage from like a place in Michigan called Massage Envy. This is not an ad, but it's like a franchise essentially. And so Sydney and I went to some place in Park Slope in Brooklyn, and just like it was called like something spa or something health or whatever it was. I don't think this woman was professionally trained. She might have been trained somewhere. No. I'm 99%. My face was down the whole time in the little hole.
Yeah.
I think she walked on my legs. Like, I'm pretty sure that she literally stood on my legs. And it was one of the most, like, I didn't want to say, like, no, stop. Because, like, I don't know, like, maybe you need that. And, like, maybe she was trained,
maybe she knows something you don't know.
Yeah, she was, I don't believe born in America. And so maybe, whatever her professional massage background is in her native country is different than it is in America. And, but the experience that I had, they didn't give you any instructions. You just walked into a room, and I was like, I think I just take all my clothes off now. And then, I laid down. I kept my boxers on, but she didn't care that I did that. Cause I felt slightly violated for a part of my massage. I feel okay. I feel good now.
Why?
The glutes had to be worked out, Sean.
She got in there.
Maybe a little more than I would have liked. But I swear to God, dude, when she was doing my legs, like my eyes are closed, my head's facing down, and I'm just trying to spidey sense, where she is in the room at any given time.
Sure.
And based on the pressure on my legs and like the movement, I think she was standing on them. And then there must have been a
balancing act.
There must have been a time. It was like a smaller room, so I think she like had her hands on the side of the walls and was doing like a left right stomp. And there must have been a time where she was like crouched, like basically sitting on my head, but like facing my legs, like to massage my back. She wasn't actually sitting on my head, but like damn near there. I'm feeling good. It was a good massage, but it was it was something that I've never, and I was not.
Right.
And also she
had
didn't
an interesting technique.
She didn't really talk at all. Again, didn't say anything to me, whatever. And then as soon as the massage was done, she ended it by like smacking my back really fast in a bunch of different places. And then she like tapped me, and I looked over, and she just went, finished. I was like, she did like a safe.
Right.
I was like, this is just insane. And so Sydney and I, we both got done at the same time in different rooms, and we walked home like that was an experience. So.
Did she have like were they weird to her too? Like essentially the same sort of
thing? I don't think they stood on her. And she said that she had to tell them a couple times, like, hey, can you, chill out just a little bit?
Okay.
I didn't, because again, I'm like, who am I to judge how hard it needs to be done? Just do it.
So a couple thoughts. Well, first off, I mean, someone standing on your back, you're standing on your legs is strange to me, but like I remember one day specifically, my back is messed up. Steve knows this, but for listeners, I've probably complained about it a lot. My back's super messed up. I remember one day we're all in the living room at the old place. I laid on the floor. I was like, can one of you step on my back, please? And both you and Chelsea were like, no. And Sydney's like, I got you. And like walked across my spine. So there's some, that's a normal thing, but your legs specifically is such an interesting thing to have someone stand on to me like that.
Yeah.
Like, especially
It
like, did she
was
barefoot your bare leg? Like, was it just
maybe, dude. I don't know. My glasses weren't on. It was dark in the room.
Gotcha.
It
The
was yeah. I don't know.
the smacking though, I think I could be talking completely out of my ass here, but I think there's like it's like bringing blood flow to like
Yeah.
whatever.
No, that
like,
makes sense.
You know what I
Because
mean? Like
she was
making your
like,
blood.
dude, she also did this thing. So like you're laying face down and your arms are down. She just pulled my arm like further down and it just went
Oh
and
yeah,
then
like
she
stretched out.
grabbed him out to the sides and then just went yink. And I was like,
Ugh.
it was yeah, I want to go back. It was you know,
Oh, you
I
want
think
to
I
go?
need
Okay,
I don't know. I actually don't know if I
right.
want to go back. I might try another massage place, but I
Listen,
think I
man.
feel pretty good. My shoulders feel pretty. My shoulders and my neck are where a lot of it was. So yeah,
Nice. Okay, dude, if it helps, man. I've never gotten a professional massage done.
you
I need to
should.
go someplace and have someone I need to go someplace and have someone beat the shit out of me. Like
Yeah,
I want the full treatment.
I
So,
don't feel. I feel like good. I don't feel bad. But when I got my first massage ever at again Massage Envy, the place I went to,
yeah.
um, I the day after I was like, I feel like a new human being. And so I would definitely recommend it. It was a bit pricey, but
Yeah.
it's so worth it.
That's the main thing. I've always just been like,
Yeah, it's tough. In other news, and we're going to talk about something really exciting that everyone knows already. This is
yeah.
something you probably already know.
I'm sure you already knew that.
You only tell me stuff I already know.
You already know what I'm going to tell you.
The first thing we have to talk about, again, you probably were excited about it last week when you first heard, but Sean, take it away. Take the news.
Guys, the strike is fucking over. Thank Christ. Chelsea, can we get some celebrate good times? Come on.
And also,
Man.
yeah.
Yeah. Dude, it's just obviously the strike has just been a bummer to watch. You know, just the greedy execs and studios and this whole thing has just been exhausting, watching everyone tiptoe around because there's so many different kinds of, you know, just from the writers and the talent that are involved in all of these shows and movies and stuff that we love, trying to tiptoe around some work that they worked really hard on that they couldn't talk about for a really long time, to different content creators and shows like us that we're trying to figure out how to go about this in the best way possible while also doing our jobs and staying true to what we do. It's definitely been a hassle over here. We appreciate you guys sticking with us through that. This is the longest like strike disruption in Hollywood is what I'm hearing. In total, if you put the two together, it was 192 days, which beats the, what year was it, back in 2000 and something
Yeah.
back in like 2008 or 9 or whatever it was, which was about 180 days. The WGA strike started on May 2nd, 23, and went until September 27th, 23. And then the SGA strike started on July 14th, 23, and went until SAG. Oh, yeah, SAG. Yeah. I typed it in wrong. But yes, that went from July 14th, 23 to November 9th, 23. So costing the studios and just Hollywood in general billions and billions of dollars.
Much money.
Yeah, which is fucking awesome. Like I love that. I love that they really stuck to their guns here. I'm assuming we're going to find out more info and details in the next few, weeks about exactly what went down and what the final contract is. But I know that one of the last things that they were really griping over was the AI restrictions. It seemed like they had gotten a lot of the other financial things figured out, but it was the AI restrictions. And the studios finally caved. I'm sure that it is still not enough, but it seems like these were really big steps. So we're just excited to get back to what we do and to be able to get the talent we want and to not to be able to speak freely, to take the chains off. I feel like Genie at the end of Aladdin right now. I'm just excited to fucking
I
do our
honestly
job
like
and not have to stress.
I saw the King Cast guys say something similar, but apologies to all the press people that we're going to be sending emails to now that we have the ability to to reach out about actors and actresses and things that we've covered over the past couple months. It's gonna be great. Really excited, specifically for everyone involved, for everyone part of SAG, for everyone a part of filmmaking in general. I know that our friends, our producer and everyone that we know that is involved in production on any level has been really hurt by this. So excited for everyone to get back to work, and for us to have new TV and film, and for things not to get like pushed so much, and for things to actually be released. Like there was, like the new Dune movie was supposed to already come out at the beginning of November. You know what I mean? And it got pushed. Like so much stuff is going to be able to come out, and excited again to be able to do our jobs on this podcast really well. So stoked. And stoked. We keep moving forward. I think it was also really funny because as soon as the strike is done, everyone starts posting stuff. Like all the people that couldn't promote their stuff start promoting. I saw so many posts, which is wonderful. And it also felt like a lot of trailers came out that they were like, hey, let's wait to promote this until like our actors and stuff can promote it. Which I think is a good segue for us to talk about a couple of things that came out. The first thing that I think we can talk about is did you see the new Ghostbusters trailer?
I did. Well, so really quick before you jump into it, I did, but I haven't seen. I've only seen Ghostbusters 1 and 2. I didn't see the one that they
Afterlife.
did.
You didn't see the all women one, and you didn't see Afterlife.
I didn't see the all women cast one, and I didn't see the one with
Paul Rudd. Afterlife.
With Paul Rudd and stuff. And that's not, I didn't like avoid them.
Yeah.
I just never got around to it. But I did watch the trailer for the new one because I was like, fuck it. And it looks kind of cool.
It looks sick. It looks really cool. Yeah. I need to watch. I've seen 1 and 2. I haven't seen them in a while. I saw the one with Kate McKinnon and the all women cast. And then I didn't see Afterlife. But what I did see was them filming parts of this movie in Soho a couple months ago. I remember actually the Snapchats. Not that long ago. It was in the middle of it must have been right before the strike they were filming it. And the trailer is a really good trailer. Anytime that Patton Oswalt is involved in something, I will want to experience it. Kumail Nanjiani is also in this.
Sure.
You also have Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd, and Paul Rudd, who we mentioned, is in Afterlife. I don't want to get lost in the shuffle. James Acaster is a name that not a lot of people know. He is one of the funniest stand-up comedians, like one of the funniest specials that I've ever seen. He has a thing on Netflix. It's a 4-episode stand-up special, and it's called Repertoire. And god damn it, if it isn't the funniest thing I've ever seen. I remember seeing it as soon as it came out.
I think that like when we were at the Redford house when we were back in Michigan? I remember you watching
funny and so smart. And I saw that he was involved in this, and I'm like, oh, I love it so much because he is just fucking hilarious. So outside of the trailer looking really cool,
hell yeah.
Very, very, very excited to see it. Although it comes out in...
Can I also just say...
it comes out in March, so that's not bad.
Yeah. Really quick, I want to say, while watching the trailer, I just got the vibe. I was like, okay, so the last thing that we see in this trailer is going to be like a somewhat silhouetted shot of the big bad. It's not going to show us what it is. And when it shows those it's like alien-esque, like ice ghost, but they're kind of in a fog, and then you just see Paul Rudd go, I was like, that's exactly how I felt.
Yeah. I also just like
that.
Paul Rudd is wonderful. He is in he's in the newest season of Only Murders in the Building, and while that show is great, he does elevate it to a bit of a different level. So anything he's in is just wonderful. So
Yeah.
yeah.
On Paul Rudd really quick, not to fully whatever, but I finally, and we've talked about how we're feeling about like what Marvel's doing and blah 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 blah, and I've been way behind, but I recently was like, fuck it, I'm gonna kind of catch up. I watched Wakanda Forever and then Ant-Man. So I'm doing them in release order. I watched Quantumania, and I've heard nothing but terrible things about Quantumania, and I went in expecting to hate it, but just like treating it like homework. I actually kind of liked it. The visuals are not good. There's so much like terrible stuff in there, but honestly it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and Paul Rudd's just fun as shit no matter what. So
yeah, Paul Rudd's great. I frankly don't care. I can't even care. I don't even have the homework because I just don't. I got no reason.
I've just heard rumors about like Hugh Jackman is back. He's going to be doing like the Deadpool stuff, and we've seen some pictures and stuff, but there's also rumors about like Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man like leading these multiverse like secret wars or something. And I was like, I think that they are getting that people are not stoked with what they're doing, and they might like be trying to really shake it up, and their multiverse like allows for that. So I think that just because things have been terrible, it doesn't mean it has to stay that way. So I guess I'm holding on to a little hope.
The movies still make a shit ton of money. Like because like Marvel's issue isn't that people don't care anymore. It's that they make, I think the movie The Marvels that's coming out, that just came out with Brie Larson and whatever, is like the most expensive movie per minute ever made. Really? And like, don't do that. Yeah. You won't make that money back. So don't do that.
I was really thinking about it. So sorry, we have one or two other things.
What did we start talking about?
Yeah, well, I just want to say
massages, right? That was the first.
While watching Quantumania, I was, the visuals are not great, and there's a whole like I think that I don't remember the name of their union, but like the visual effects union, I think their contract is up.
VFX doesn't have a union.
But they're forming one, but aren't they included in something? There's some contract that's going to be up soon, so we might.
They're trying to be a part of IATSE, but I don't think that they are currently.
Got you.
I don't think that they're unionized.
Okay. I'm going to come back to this part of this conversation on next episode when I know what I'm talking about, the thing that I have in my mind. But either way, they are overworking the shit out of visual effects people. That's a big part of the reason that it doesn't look good, is they have like just unrealistic, demand, stuff we've talked about before. But while watching it, I was like, they are entering, I think part of it's like this weird double-edged sword of if you're going to do a movie, make it look good, make it look good. But also it's like the plot lines that they are diving into now are way more complicated than like fucking Iron Man in terms of
of course,
visuals. Like you
need to have watched it.
Yeah, well, it's just more. What I mean is like it's way more fantastical. It's the visual. It's visually significantly more ambitious. So it's basically. It's like, how can they make these movies while paying people what they should be paid and doing them well without spending this amount of money? So I was just thinking about that. Like, I can't imagine them being able to accomplish what the Marvel universe is, like in terms of comics, like these fantastical stories, and doing it fairly to the people that work on it without spending even more money than they're spending now. So it's like this weird hole.
I just think you can see a movie that looks like Everything Everywhere All at Once, or has, like you can do a lot for not $200 gajillion. Like there's ways to not spend. Like we have seen films with great visual effects, even Avatar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like is going to cost less. Like you can make a film with great visual effects and not spend $1 billion. So I think that there's like a balance.
Sure. Maybe the way to do it is to stop having, big name faces
huge
and
stars.
cramming in a
I'm
ton
sure that's part of
into
it.
Every single, because that's the thing is you have huge stars that are there basically just as fucking cameos in every movie at this point,
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know.
Yeah, why
Either way,
Jackson
I was just thinking about like the paradox of how to do this.
I think that people are able to do it a lot. Like people are able to make good things with not a lot of money. And I think that Marvel should be able to figure it out at the end of the day.
That's
So,
fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Speaking of things that hopefully gets figured out, I don't know if that's as good of a transition as I thought it was. We had a trailer come out yesterday. I was very surprised that you texted me asking me what I thought about it, because I thought that we would want to wait to talk about it on the podcast as we do with a lot of things, and we can still talk about it.
Yeah. I was just
In
excited.
2005,
Yeah.
Nickelodeon released a show called Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it is one of the best TV shows, not even just animated shows. It's one of the best TV shows ever. It is so good. It is so good. Not based off of anything, original content. And M. Night Shyamalan adapted it into a live action film.
Yeah, everything changed when M. Night attacked.
Yeah, the live action film was not great. They then did a spin-off. I don't know if that's chronologically correct. I think it was. After the live action, they did a spin-off animated show about Korra, who is the next Avatar after Aang. Korra is also great. It is not as good as Avatar in my opinion, but it is still a 9 out of 10, not 8.5 out of 10. And yesterday we got our first taste of the new live action series. So I guess, yeah, we told each other our thoughts, but I'm curious if you give me a run through of your thoughts here.
Sure. Well, we did very basic stuff.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I think, we basically were saying to each other, like, it looks a little better than we thought. I think you might have been a little bit more pessimistic about it. I had seen some early concept stuff that had me excited. But there's tons of projects that I've seen early concept stuff that's amazing, and then the movie looks like dog shit. But I think that I'm liking what I'm seeing. It's not absolute perfect visual whatever, but it is certainly better than what we saw in M. Night's movie. My main thing is that we didn't really see much fighting or bending. Like, it was a lot of everything else, but I think that nailing the fighting and the bending is going to be key here. It's kind of how I feel about like Star Wars stuff. Like, I want really, really well choreographed fights. If you don't nail the bending, then I don't care. You can do everything else perfect, but
that's what they tell you in the circus. If you don't nail the bending, I don't care.
I don't get it.
In the circus, people are bending. I don't know. Continue. Keep going. Ignore it. Go.
But I think Appa looks really cool. I think a bunch of stuff looks cool. And I'm pretty stoked on what I'm seeing with the casting. Like, it's visually, I'm in. I just hope that it lives up. And again, at the end of the day, if it sucks, then so what? We still have the original. But I'm excited to give it a shot, and I hope that it impresses me. What about you, man?
Yeah, I think so. There was a lot that I liked in the trailer. I thought that the scenes that they showed looked great. I think when they quickly show the big like glacial area in the Water Nation looks really cool. When they do the the like lifting crane shot of Ba Sing Se looks super cool. I think that the way that it just visually looks really cool. There's not, to your point, a ton of bending. There's a little bit, and I think it's the only shot that I can think of is the one you see, like, it's an above shot and someone's doing this and the fire's like going around a person. It's like, whoosh. And so I think it's really easy for visual effects to look bad, but I think that if everything around it looks good, like, that's just one thing that they're gonna have to mess with. Like, even the shot when they're riding Appa, like, the depth of field is really fucking like, it's so blurred in the back, and you can just absolutely tell that it's a green screen shot. And so I think it's just it's about finding the right balance. The only thing that I really worry about, so it's like I think if I take the visual cues that I got from the trailer, I'm like, I'm excited. The only thing that I worry about is that the original series creators were on this project from the get-go, and they left a part of the way through, and they were basically like, we just don't think that this is going to be our thing. We're going to do something completely different that's not in the Avatar world, or it might actually be a different Avatar animated series that they're going to do. But they were like, this live action, just we couldn't figure it out the way that we wanted to. We still want to make it. We want them to make it, but we just don't want to be a part of it anymore. And so they left. And so I just, the story of Avatar and the way that all the characters are so grounded, and the way that the balance of levity and seriousness and what is essentially a kid's show is just so good. And so yeah, I'm really hoping that comes through. It's also 10 episodes, so I don't know if this is like book 1 is the first one, you know what I mean, or if we're trying to get through the whole story of Aang in 10 episodes. Which I'm very curious about. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, a couple things. I didn't know that the OG creators had left.
They were originally a part of it.
Yeah, that is a big bummer. I thought that they were like consulting the whole time. I didn't hear about them leaving. Or if I did, I forgot. But that is incredibly concerning to me. Just off the rip, but I will also say that I think that there is I don't believe that it is possible. This has to be book 1 or it's going to be bad. There's no way to do that whole story in 10 episodes and it not feel like a rushed piece of shit. I just don't see how that would be possible. In my opinion, there's just too much, and it's just too big of a story to fit into 10 episodes. So.
Yeah, or you're going to skip over some stuff. I think the things that point me in the direction of at least it being more than book 1 is that they have, I'm trying to find George Takei from Star Trek is playing Ko, the big spider thing. Okay. And I don't think you see Ko for a while. The other thing is Amanda Midthunder, lead actress from Prey, is Princess Yue, who's the princess at the end of the first season.
When I saw her, I was kind of wondering what was going on.
Yeah. But, so again, I'm really excited. This is a series and a story that I absolutely love, and that I think is one of the best stories, just like storytelling things that's happened in TV in such a long time. And so I just really hope that they do it well.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. If this is the whole thing, though, then I'm just like, why did you do it? Like, why? What was the point of doing a 10 episode thing that everyone will complain about? Like, there's no way that people will respond to it positively.
Yeah, you'd have to imagine that they're going to want to do more than one season too, if it does well. I wonder if I'm wrong about when Ko shows up in the series. Let's see if we can find appearances. So Ko, who's this big spider thing, first shows up in book 1. So I mean,
the princess thing is kind of confusing to me. I'm trying to remember. I just need to rewatch Airbender.
Princess Yue is at the very end. It's when the moon and the sun are swimming in the little koi fish.
So
Anywho, that was stuff that you probably already know by the time that we're talking about this. All right, we have a great interview with Mick Davis, the writer-director of Walden. I would normally ask Sean what he thinks about this interview, but I'm going to take it this week. I want to tell everyone Mick has a top 5 accent for any guest that we've ever had, and just was a blast to talk to. So Hope you guys enjoy our conversation with Mick, and we will catch you on the other side for our mostly horror recommendations of the week. All right, we are joined today by Mick Davis. Mick is a writer and director whose newest film, Walden, featuring Emil Hirsch, premieres in select theaters on November 10th and on digital December 12th. Mick, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Stoked to have you.
We're very excited to have you, excited to talk about your filmography and Walden. Before we do that, Mick, we have a question that we ask all of our guests, and we have a lot of guests from all areas of the universe, all spots on Earth, and we like to know what everyone's intro to the horror genre is. So a lot of people, some people that come on the show aren't fans, some people are, but there's got to be a horror film that I guess really sticks out in your memory as being like the first one that you saw that you maybe shouldn't have seen at a young age, or someone showed to you. Do you have a memory that sticks out of your intro to the horror genre at all?
Absolutely. When I was a kid, I don't know, my father must have been a little sick in the head because he took me to see a double feature. It was Dracula with Christopher Lee and Frankenstein with Boris Karloff. And I was only six or seven.
Yeah.
It was back in Scotland. There was any kid could walk in and see any movie, except porn. There was no porn in theaters back then. So that was it, and I never slept for a week after seeing Frankenstein. So my father's dead now, but if he was alive, I'd fucking hammer him for making me do that. But that was my intro to horror, and the next blast after that was the ultimate was The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Do you remember, so you said you couldn't sleep for a week after that. Do you remember, kind of your specific reaction to it? Like, was it something where, there wasn't really a divide between reality and the film at that point, at that age?
Yeah, I was fucking terrified. I came home and we had wallpaper on our walls because in Scotland, people had wallpaper on their walls. Nobody painted their walls. So I started looking at the wallpaper and starting to make faces of Frankenstein out of it in my head.
Yeah.
And I run into my mom and dad's bedroom and say, Frankenstein's on the wall. He's coming for me. And shit like that. And my dad was like, oh, you're fine. Don't worry. Just go back to bed. That's a very Scottish thing. They don't take the kid and hold them or put them in an embrace. They just go, get back to bed. You'll be fine.
Coddling.
I just had to, my tail between my legs, go back to bed and try not to look at fucking Frankenstein in the wallpaper. And it took me a week to go over it. And then after that, I started thinking that was quite cool, actually. So, that genre kind of hung around with me. And I guess that's why, periodically, I try to make a movie that has a little sort of lean towards horror because I do love horror genre.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's a great segue.
Frankenstein is just one of my regulars, especially on Halloween. There's a handful of movies I try to keep to a certain time of year, and I got an old Frankenstein VHS. I just threw it on the other day, so I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's an absolute gem. Speaking of, so you say you love the horror genre. Looking at your career, it seems like you have touched on a lot of different genres. It's a pretty diverse collection of movies. I'm seeing The Match, which almost looks like a Scottish bar comedy from 1999. There's Modigliani. I've been trying to say that all day. Did I do it right? Did I do okay?
Nailed it. Yeah,
got it. Which is this biopic about Italian painter. Very curious about that. I still haven't gotten to see that. The Invisible, this short about the haunting of Charles Manson, and then all the way into these Christmas movies. You've done these 2 Christmas movies recently. I'm just curious what that's like covering such a wide range of movies, and what could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I like all kinds of movies. For me, it's not. I don't want to be pigeonholed as a director and as a writer. And I also think a good story is a good story. So it doesn't matter if it's a Christmas movie or a period drama or a horror movie, but a good story and a good character is what I'm always chasing. So when I get offered stuff to do, if I like the character and I don't care what genre it is, I'll go do it. There are things that I prefer to do. There are horror movies that I want to make, that I have scripts I've written that I want to do next. And then, in fact, the next movie I'm going to shoot is in Romania, and it's another period movie about a sculptor. So it just changes up for me, but it's always down to a good story and a good character. That's how I look at it. And like The Match, for instance, even although it was shot in Scotland, it was about two pubs and it was a comedy. It was actually financed by propaganda here in Universal and Steve Golan, the late Steve Golan, who discovered David Fincher. So he's the one who gave me my break as a director. And so, it just varied up. It's always, and I always wanted to make a Christmas movie. I even told my agents one time, I'll do a fucking Hallmark movie or a Lifetime movie. I don't care. I just want to make a Christmas movie because it's my favorite time of year. And as it happened, I got offered one, and it was one with an edge because it had Jeremy Piven in it, which was fabulous. So, and then the next one after that was John Cleese. So it's just, I take them as they come. I want to work. I don't want to do shit. Sometimes I've done real shit. But you try to do your best, and it doesn't always work out. But I like to think that I go in with the best intentions, no matter what the genre is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like that allows you to kind of like spread your wings a little bit too, when you're not, like you said, not being pigeonholed in a specific genre. Like that's the guy that just does X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? You're allowed to, to maybe try some things that you may not normally get to do if you're just doing one type of genre the whole time.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like, for instance, I've written about 300 scripts.
Whoa,
and most of them are pretty bad, but there are some that are actually quite good, and among them are horror, drama, comedy, thriller. There's even a kind of tentpole trilogy that I wrote along the sort of Marvel Universe type thing, which is huge. I mean, it's you're talking a couple of $100 million to make this movie, but I just had to write the story because the concept was just too good. It was just way too good to pass up on. So I write all kinds of stuff. And then, then the agent, the manager, whatever, they'll read the shit and they'll go, I think we can get this made. I think we can get this done. That one's going to have to wait until somebody gives us a check for 200 mil. But in the meantime, let's go do the 10 mil movie. And I'm like, hey, I'll do that. That's fine.
Yeah.
So that's how it works,
Just a love of storytelling. I have to ask, you mentioned this Romania project. I'm sure you can't talk a ton on it, but you said it was about a sculptor. I'm assuming you're a big art fan with the Modigliani movie. I want to bring that up. Were you like a big fan of his work specifically? His name wasn't something I was super familiar with, but looking at his pieces, I've seen them before. And then it was interesting to me. He's had a pretty intense influence on at least two pretty big horror movies. Del Toro's Mama seems to be pretty directly related to his paintings. And then the woman, the painting in it. I was just curious, are you like a big fan of his work outside of the movie? Or?
It's actually funny because about 2 months ago, I had dinner with Andy Garcia, who stars in Modigliani, and he's going to play the sculptor for me in this movie in Romania.
Nice.
We had dinner, and who walks up to us to introduce himself to Andy in particular is the director of It.
Oh,
and he says to Andy, he says, "Oh my God, I love you, Andy, especially Modigliani, because I put a Modigliani in my movie." And Andy says, "Well, this is the writer-director of Modigliani." And so we had this lovely, 45-minute conversation in the parking lot of Musso and Frank, just yapping about Modigliani and about horror. So it was a really great conversation. So, it was a lot of fun. So that was nice to see that happen. And as far as the sculptor is concerned, it's not about the art for me. It's about the characters, I have to say, because I'm kind of a cynic. I think that most of the shit that's hanging in most museums is fake anyway, and people walk around going, oh my God, that is beautiful. And they start crying. And it was probably painted a week ago by some guy in the basement, So I don't buy into that nonsense. What I buy into is the actual guy or the woman who did it.
Yeah. Sure.
And it's their life story that appeals to me. And the sculptor is just the story of Constantine Brancusi, or Brancosi, if you see it in its literal term. And he was a Romanian sculptor who lived in Paris and was a great sculptor of the 20th century. And Peggy Guggenheim and Nelson Rockefeller basically financed his career. And the movie is about that. And it's also about how he takes a young gypsy kid under his wing who has polio. And he wants to help this kid. And I kind of based it loosely on Charlie Chaplin's movie, The Kid, because I love that movie so much. And so that's where I got the inspiration. And so again, it's about the character and it's about the circumstances the character's in. And it's really the art is secondary to me. I'm just not one for staring at paintings and getting all excited, because they're mostly fake anyway,
That's fair, and I will never go to a museum, I think, the same way again.
Yeah,
I have a great new perspective.
I was just gonna say, I guess I haven't really thought about them being fake, but it makes sense. But was there a turning point that made you like, where does that idea come from, that a lot of them are so fake? Because now I'm about to deep dive into this conspiracy or truth.
There's a really good piece for you to watch. It's called F for Fake, and it was directed by Orson Welles.
Nice.
And it's done in the 60s, and it's a documentary about basically people who could fake paintings, and in particular even Modigliani's and Picasso's, dry them, then take them to the Louvre, let these guys in the Louvre who are so-called, experts, examine it, call it an original, and then put a price tag of like 2 or 3 million on it and sell it. And Orson Welles actually films these guys faking these paintings.
What?
And they talk about how most of the paintings hanging in the museums are just copies, and the actual real shit is either never been found or it's in the basement in a box.
Sure.
Wow.
So it kind of, that's where my cynicism grew, because if Orson Welles tells me it's fake, then I believe it.
No, listen,
fair enough.
Yeah, we always would listen to Orson. I love that. So speaking of characters, right? That's a great transition to Walden specifically. So in your on the Walden website, you have like a director's statement kind of talking like what you've said about the character itself and why you were drawn to make this. One specific thing about Walden is the occupation. So we've seen kind of this good person go bad or get a terminal illness and want to do something maybe vigilante wise, but never necessarily to this degree. And I'm curious why stenography is what was chosen here, because it's such a niche thing, and it's even watching him hit the stenography, whatever it's called, the little machine, it doesn't look like something that exists in today's day and age when we know it does. So I'm really curious why that decision was made to go with stenography.
Have you guys had a chance to see the movie
Yes.
Yet?
Yes.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you why. I've always watched courtroom dramas, as everybody has, and everybody's so focused on the bad guy, the good guy, the judge, whatever the jury, whatever. But then you see this little guy or this little lady sitting in the middle of the courtroom with a steno machine tapping away, and nobody gives a shit about them. And then when I watched the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, same thing. There's a woman sitting there, and I'm thinking to myself, I wonder what she does when she finishes work at the end of the day, because she's kind of a ghost in the courtroom. Nobody gives a shit about her. She probably goes home, takes care of the husband or feeds the cat. And then I wonder if she puts a costume on at night and jumps off a tall building to save lives.
Right.
And then I thought to myself, now that's a really neat profession for a vigilante. Because no one would ever in a million years think that a stenographer could become that guy.
Yeah.
And the next step was I saw a Pillsbury Dough man in my head with a bow tie. And I thought my character should be someone that if you pressed his tummy, he would chuckle or laugh, but he's a killer. And then the name Walden came to mind, and the second name Dean was from James Dean because I'm a James Dean fan. And then I sat down. I got hired to write it because the producers thought I was a lunatic because they asked me, "We want to work. We want to shoot with you. We want to do a movie. What do you want to do?" I said, "A movie about a stenographer." And they kind of looked at each other as if this guy's lost his mind. And I said, "Yeah, but he's one with a difference." And when I explained it, they said, "Go right." So I sat down, I wrote it, and a couple of weeks later, I'd done a draft, and then within a few weeks, we were casting.
Wow.
Wow.
That is, I love the thought process for one.
Yes.
Is phenomenal. And that's really where the gold comes from, is the thoughts that no one else is really thinking. Like, what is that person doing? I love that it specifically came from the Depp Heard trial,
Yes,
which I haven't even thought of in a minute. Not to get off of the stenographer bit, did Emil did he really learn how to like use shorthand in that way and type it out, or is it just kind of winging it?
Well, he learned. Now, I will say this about Emil. I gotta take my hat off to this guy. When I met him for the first time and had a coffee with him, he told me his dad had read the script and loved it and told him he should do it. His friends, his closest friends, read the script and told him he should do it. And he said, but when I read it myself, he said, I just recognized the character within myself. And so he kind of came as Emil to Georgia for me. That beautiful cadence in his voice, the Pillsbury Dough thing I gave him, so he adopted that physically. And then we had to bring in a couple of stenographers. And what I wanted was an old machine. I didn't want the brand new digital shit. I wanted him to carry around the one that his father used and his grandfather used, because that for me was the connection of the generations. And also I felt that it showed that he was kind of trapped in time, that, it could have been the 60s, this movie. It could have been the 50s. It could be To Kill a Mockingbird. It could be In the Heat of the Night. It had that vibe. And he then embodied that for me. So we sat him down with the steno guy, and the steno guy taught him how to do it. And he taught him how to do it while looking at the jury or looking at the defense or whoever. So he actually mastered as much as he possibly could on it. And when we get in close for the finger shots, he's getting it right pretty much most of the time. So, the steno guy we had was very impressed. But then again, I would expect nothing less from an actor like Emil, because he does embody, look, he's made a lot of movies and he's just like me and everybody else. Some are good and some are great, and some are, not what he wanted. But he does commit himself to the roles. Mm-hmm. And in Walden, he walked away from Walden begging to do more of it. He's like, when's the sequel? And then on top of that, for him, it was, according to Emil, it's the greatest character he's ever played. So that's the sum total of the steno machine for Emil and Walden.
Love it. It's the decision to go with like a really old one that looks like his grandfather and his father had it absolutely connects. And I love the like period ambiguity that you were kind of talking about while watching the movie. I was trying to figure out, like, when exactly is this supposed to be placed? Is he just super old fashioned, but other people were kind of, you could tell a bit. So I love that. And it becomes a character in itself, the machine. I also only recently learned that shorthand even exists, like within the past couple of years, like as writing, and seeing this machine do it blew my mind. So it was just interesting to watch the machine on film. You talked a little bit about like the Pillsbury Doughboy aspect and what Emil brings. Can you guys can you talk a little bit about fleshing out some of those mannerisms though, like that accent, like what exactly was the process of finding Walden, or did he really just kind of show up with it and it clicked immediately? Because his character is so different. I mean, when I think of Emil, I think of Into the Wild, and it was just such a different role for him than what I've seen. So what was developing Walden with him like?
It's always about conversation with me. I'm not really big on rehearsals.
Okay.
Sometimes you don't have the time for rehearsals, but also I think sometimes if you rehearse stuff, you may miss the gold that you're going to want in front of the camera. So I like to keep it fresh. For me, it's conversation. So we talked and we talked and we talked. And I would describe scenes to him that I felt were really important, that he show his deep South manners. I wanted him to be an impeccably mannered man who would stand up when a lady entered the room and would always allow everyone else to speak first, and didn't consider himself to have any kind of position above everybody in life. And I told him to think about Doc Holliday of the Old West fame, Wyatt Earp's. I says, because when you read about Doc Holliday, he was a Southern gentleman. And apparently he would seduce with his manners. He was such an orator. But he was the fastest draw in the West. And I said, so when you're talking with people, you must disarm people with innocence and charm, to the point that people would never take you as a threat at all. So that when you do what you do, you slip right back in to that charming, almost self-deprecating character who has blended into the background, and in doing that, becoming the most unlikely of suspects. Because, Charles Bronson did it in Death Wish, and when you look at Charles Bronson, he looked like a killer to me. It was a good movie for then, but he looked like a fucking killer because the guy was right built, and he had a face like stone.
Scary.
But for Neil, it was about combing the hair to the side, putting bow ties on him, putting clothes on him that people who maybe were tourists coming into that town and seeing him in the courtroom would just laugh at him and think, this guy's caught in a time warp. So it was always about disarming the audience and letting the audience walk away from the movie thinking, why do I love that guy? I want that kind of confusion in the audience. And so it was always about talking. And then the accent itself and the dialogue had to have a certain level of intelligence to it. It had to be up there higher. It had to be someone who had a lovely education, a great command of the English language, even when he's doing the bad things he's doing. Like the scene with the guy, without giving anything away, the scene with the guy, the heroin addict, the way he speaks with them, and the words that he uses, this is degradation, this is, it's the humiliation. All these words you don't get from someone who's doing what Walden does. So that juxtapose what he's doing, it should be enough to confuse the shit out of the audience,
Sure.
Yeah, I also think that there's you get a lot of his character in the elements that have levity in them too. Like Sean and I were talking about the kind of prayer earlier in the film, and there's a good bit of comedy, prayer. Like the sassy comedy in there. So I like, were you trying to kind of trickle in the comedy on top of the thriller elements as well to provide some levity?
Well, yeah, because otherwise you're one-dimensional then, because what you're doing is you're just presenting a thriller and you're not presenting real people. You're trying to get that three-dimensional vibe going. I'm pretty sure that some of the most heinous people in history were actually quite funny at times,
Oh, yeah.
Probably, I'm sure Ted Bundy cracked a few good jokes.
Yep.
People. And so, it's important to have a bit of levity because it's a nice balance, and it also throws you because you're following the levity and then suddenly you turn a corner and something happens and you go, whoa, never saw that coming. So I never want to give any signals to it. And, I've one good example of that is the scene, if you remember, in the elevator when Kelly Gardner approaches him and she locks off the elevator to try and draw out something about his life and to tease him and impose herself. That scene was written in the script as a drive-by where the two of them would be in the car on a flatbed and we'd have cameras hooked up and I'd be in a truck shouting instructions. But we were actually in a building before that and I saw the elevator and I thought to myself, to hell with that flatbed shit. I'm going to put the two of them in the elevator because it will be so much more fun to put him in a claustrophobic situation where he can't escape her. And she then imposes herself on him as a strong woman. Yeah. And I loved that it was kind of the beginning of a love story in that sense, because he is so intriguing, because he's kind of nerdy, but I think that the beauty of his disposition is very intriguing for a woman. Not every guy a woman falls in love with is gonna look like Brad or Johnny. There's all kinds of people can be loved.
Sure. Yeah, very few can look like Brad and Johnny. No, I love that, and that's that's the whole thing about Walden's characters. You're so intrigued because of the mix of everything we've talked about, for the accent, the mannerisms, all of that. We do want to touch on kind of like a couple of the main themes of this, and you mentioned it before, imagining the stenographer turning into a Batman-esque character, but there's a lot of vigilante in pop culture. Again, Batman is a great example. Dexter is probably larger in the pop culture in terms of horror. There's also a film called God Bless America that Sean and I were thinking about when we watched this. That's like along the similar lines. There's obviously a big discussion, I think, in America at least, about people wanting to take things into their own hands, or they don't think that law enforcement can do things, or trial by jury can achieve things that they're supposed to achieve in terms of justice. Is that kind of what you were trying to convey with him taking things into his own hands, or do you feel strongly one way or another about that?
Yeah, I think that for me, I think the worst disease to mankind is not cancer or something other tragic medical condition. I think the worst disease is loneliness. There are so many people out there who are very lonely and nobody cares about them. Nobody gives them the time of day. They'll come home, sit down in their kitchen with their knife and fork and their plate, and then they'll listen to the clock tick away the hours and go to bed. And nobody ever cares about them. And Walden was that for me. And I also felt at the same time that the culture we've become now is that we've become observers as opposed to doers or being proactive. Yeah. And that's you can see that every day when people are videotaping, they've got their phones out and they're filming somebody being beaten up or a terrible car crash or something awful happen. No one's rushing to help. They're just filming it. And, and sometimes you think, put your phone down for God's sake and go and help that person, And so that for me, that combination of that lonely guy and the turning point in his life, realizing that he's maybe on his way out, and the injustice of what he sits with every day. And keep in mind, law enforcement, they do a hell of a job, and they have to take home shit that you and I could never imagine in our lives. And they have to live with that. They have to pretend to be a dad, pretend to be a husband, to pretend to be a good church-going person, and then get into bed at night and hope that the next day they get up and things won't be as bad. And they usually are as bad. And they live with that. Now, for me, a stenographer is someone who, say a 10-year career, has sat in a courtroom 5 days a week, listening to heinous crimes, listening to despicable acts against women, children, men, whatever, awful things. And they have to sit there, record that. They don't get to turn to the judge and go, that is really terrible, Your Honor. Can you imagine that person doing that? They can't open their mouth. They just have to sit there, record all of that, and then pack up and go home with all of that inside their head. And so Walden, for me, was a guy who took it home with him and he boxed it up. And so he used that spare room that he used to use as a kid as a place to keep all the pain. And for me, that was him taking the pain away from everyone and putting it in a place where no one would see it. He was protecting people in a sense, but ultimately all he was doing was he was fermenting inside himself the anguish of knowing what people go through and nobody is helping them. And ultimately his catalyst became the fact that when he realizes that he himself may be on the way out, then he could not sit back or hold his phone up and film someone suffering again. He couldn't do it. So that's why it became what it became.
Yeah, I love that. I actually, so two parts of that. I mean, the he's almost the dichotomy within himself, right? Like he feels forced to, his job is literally recording these things, you know? So like the point of people just videotaping things like that literally is his job. So he's like forced to do that in a way, and he has to, you know, kind of flip when you know, when he punches the clock. But to what you were saying about just witnessing these terrible things over and over, that completely is what I was thinking about almost the entire film. Both my father and my girlfriend's dad were police officers, and I remember as a kid being like, hearing things that he would witness on the job and just being like, whoa, that's so crazy, but not having the wherewithal to think of how it may have affected him as a human being mentally, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's such a you know, crazy thing that we don't think is we just take it in stride as like, oh, that's just a part of your job, and we don't think of the actual repercussions that it has.
No, we don't, and I I know a few folks in law enforcement, because some projects I've done. I did a show years ago where we had some FBI guys, technical advisors and stuff. And it's, and I think, so many, tragic cases for cops, hitting the booze or other things that happen in their lives because they just can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
You're asking someone to spend, sometimes a 12-hour shift dealing with things that just are unacceptable in humanity. And then they're expected to just behave normally.
Yeah.
And that's why when they get a bad rap, and let's be honest, there are bad apples in every profession. But for the most part, what would civilization be without law enforcement? We would just be animals running around killing each other. So, and really, I could have done a cop as Walden, but the stenographer, I think, was much more fun.
Then the juxtaposition is much more interesting. Yeah. I just want to say it's obviously, everything that you guys said about law enforcement, and just you could really apply that to anyone that has to be there in these tragic moments and deal with these intense things. But I also think there's an interesting metaphor there when you were talking about like we're more watchers today and opposed to reacting. I mean, technology and social media has made it so that pretty much everybody is bombarded by these images all the time, images of violence and things like that. And especially in the US, like sometimes, because I feel like there's messages of like a justice system that is kind of failing in certain aspects, where the bad guy sometimes gets off and it's the wrong person. Sometimes, especially here, it's even our law enforcement that we have to be afraid of. And those are some of the videos we're seeing. So it's just an interesting idea, the idea of, the things that we have to take in and what it does to us psychologically and how far we can go before we're pushed to act, and what happens when we're given nothing to lose.
I think that listen, as I said, there are bad apples in every profession,
of course,
and there are egos as well, which is also a dangerous thing. But ultimately, sometimes, and I'm not making excuses for anyone, but sometimes people just soak up so much pain
Yeah.
and can't take it anymore, and
Yep.
and their outlet is whatever it is. It may be going and playing a game of hockey and beating the shit out of the opposition, or it may be doing something just awful where they hurt someone on the street for no reason. So, that it's bound to, they're only human. It's bound to show itself at some point. But for the most part, thank God, the majority of them keep it in check. And again, they take it home, and we never have to be inside their heads, because I'd hate to be inside their heads.
Yeah, it's scary enough in my head. I don't even want to know.
Yeah, I like the hockey. The hockey suggestion is not a bad one.
Healthier.
It is a healthy outlet. Well, Mick, we have really appreciated getting to chat about Walden. Before we let you go, we don't normally get to talk with people that are from outside of the US. I know that you probably live in LA now, but we wanted to tap into some Scottish things, if we could grab you for a second, because there's a lot of links from Scotland, or at least the Celtic region, and horror. And so we wanted to just float a couple things your way and see if any of them pop out to you, or if you have any, Scottish background that you want to provide. I think the biggest one, and it just passed a couple days ago, but Halloween is Celtic in origin. And it's dwindled. Sean and I were just talking about how much it's dwindled kind of in the US. It's a big thing. People will dress up and post their costumes, but it's not as big as it used to be.
Yeah.
Is Halloween really big in Scotland? Is it different in any way?
Well, I've lived in the States for 30 years now, so
Okay.
it's a tough one for me. In Scotland, I don't think they don't. I don't think they certainly don't celebrate it the way we do here. But I think it's got more of that sort of mystical thing going on for them back there. The pagan rituals and all that stuff that goes with it.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of sort of paganites, if you like, who run around at Halloween and do sheep's blood on their face and shit like that. But and then there's still kids that go out, but these are slightly more dangerous times for kids to stroll around the streets. It's very important that the parents are out with them.
Yeah.
But you'll always get candy at somebody's door in Scotland in Halloween, but you may also get a can of beer.
That's right up my alley. It sounds like I gotta go to.
Even if you're 12 years old, but
hey,
don't drink.
Yeah.
Wait till you're 18.
What's the drinking age in Scotland? Is it different?
18, yeah, I think.
18, okay.
Yeah. Just put this away until you're 18. You'll have a whole fridge full. We also got to bring up, Scotland's home to one of the most famous cryptids of all time, the Loch Ness Monster. I was just curious if there was any like Scottish legends or monsters or lore that you're particularly interested in. I know you said you mainly want to make the drawing point of a story to you is the character. Is there a monster that is an interesting enough character that you would ever dive into a creature feature sort of world?
Well, Scottish folklore there's just way too much of it to even get into. And the Loch Ness Monster is, everybody in Scotland laughs about the Loch Ness Monster because we only bring it out in the summertime and American tourists are there. And then whoever's wearing that big long head goes back to being, a mechanic for the rest of the year until he's used again next summer. When it comes to that, I mean, the folklore that I love is the one I'm going to do hopefully next year it's called the Piper, which is based on the Pied Piper of Hamelin.
Nice, yeah.
Story, right, and which is a 13th century poem, and I've written a modern version of it where the Pied Piper comes to a small island in the northwest of the country, up here, and because they're fracking and the children are suffering, the Piper comes with the rats to try and save the children. So it's, and that's folklore, and that's the kind of shit that I love, but it's German, it's not Scottish.
Sure.
That's so good. We have to mention this. Sean, you can go ahead.
Yes, I was just about to say, it's really funny that you bring that up. Very early into mine and Steve's friendship, which has gone on for 12, 13 years now, something like that.
Right.
We in high school we were going to make a short film called Hamelin about the Pied Piper, and we had this whole twist. Yeah, so it's
I like
something
your
that,
idea though. It's a good
yeah,
idea.
it's something that
Yeah.
means a lot to us. We love that story, and I'd love to see your take on
Yeah,
it. You got to make it happen.
yeah, well, yeah, because the Piper and my, I had to give him a backstory because the poem itself there is no backstory. So I give him a backstory, and yeah, and the central character is a little 12-year-old boy who, because of the fracking and because of the shit that he's been drinking, the water he's been drinking, he was born with a growth on his back, and other kids have suffered. And we think the Piper's a bad guy in the movie, but things change as the story progresses, and we realize that it's us that are the bad guys, and the children are the ones that are suffering. So, and the Piper story is about, it really was about kids, you know. So,
Yeah.
so the rats are just, they're just a very cool visual, but ultimately, my Piper is just, he's fucking awesome. He's
Nice.
awesome.
Make it happen. Let's
Yeah,
get this rolling. Who do
I
we
love
gotta
I love
send
that.
emails to?
Just get the students to write me a check, and that'll do it.
Yeah.
Well, Mick, again, we really appreciate the time. To wrap up the conversation, we always end with what we call mostly horror recommendations, which is if you could indulge us with a horror film and then a non-horror film, any other film that you would recommend to the listeners that you think they should check out.
Or book or
Well,
poem or anything like that. Yeah.
poem, did you say? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
anything. We're just horror.
That's really cool, actually. Well, the one movie that stands out I mentioned already is The Exorcist, because it's really perfection
Yes.
from top to bottom. So I would say The Exorcist. I mean, a close second to that for me would be The Shining, but The Exorcist for me is really the one. I mean, what Billy Friedkin did with that movie was just. I watch it once a month just because I'm a Catholic, so it's good for me to watch that.
Yeah, that's more than me.
Get you whipped into shape.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It makes me go back to church after I watch it.
Rest in
and
peace, William.
then a non horror. I would suggest a movie to your audience, and I really don't know if I don't, because I don't know your audience. But I'll take a leap here. There's a movie from the 50s called Sweet Smell of Success.
Okay.
And it was directed by Sandy McKendrick, who was a Scotsman, and it stars Burt Lancaster and Tony Curtis. And it was written by Ernie Lehman, who was probably the greatest screenwriter in Hollywood history. He wrote Sound of Music, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. He wrote every big movie you could imagine.
Okay.
He wrote this movie, and it's a story about a newspaper guy, Burt Lancaster, who has a bizarre obsession for his own sister. And Tony Curtis plays this creepy little guy who's always trying to get his clients mentioned in Burt Lancaster's column. But in order to do that, he has to do all the dirty jobs for Burt Lancaster. And one of them is to destroy her relationship with a jazz singer. Now, I know it doesn't sound really appealing probably to a lot of people, but if you watch it, it's the sublime lesson in filmmaking and screenwriting and acting. And it was produced by Burt Lancaster and Hecht. And it's a work of art. And it's in my movies, my top 10 movies, it's in there amongst those. So I would say Sweet Smell of Success, and then I'll toss in a poem for you. And the poem, I'm not going to recite it, but the poem is by Dylan Thomas.
Okay.
And the poem is called Do Not Go Gentle. And it really is, in the opening line is, do not go gentle into that good night, but rage against the darkness of the light. And ultimately it's about never give up. Keep going. Even as you're fading out, always keep going. So it's a remarkable poem. So there you have it, boys. That's
love it.
We love Yeah, we love a wide-ranging
Yes.
recommendation. I'm a big fan of Criterion Collection, as you can see behind me, and I've seen Sweet Smell of Success, and I've never seen the film, but I've seen it physically, and I've always wanted to watch it. So I love that recommendation.
It's really great. You'll enjoy it.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, Mick, thank you again. Again, for all of our listeners, Walden is out in select theaters on November 10th and digital December 12th. Thanks again, Mick. We really appreciate your time. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to our interview with Mick Davis. Thank you again to Mick for hopping on the show to talk about Walden. Before we let all you listeners go, it's time again for our mostly horror recommendations of the week. But before that, a little tidbit, and this is kind of me bearing this lead, but we talk in our episode with Adam from Eye of the Duck in the intro outro, when we talk about the new They Follow film, and we talked about whether or not Disaster Piece was going to be a part of They Follow. And just a little update for all of our listeners who make it this far in the episode. We've had Disaster Piece, aka Rich Freeland, on the show in the past, and I thought, let's send a little email out and see if we can get an answer. And so
Yeah.
I asked Rich, I said, hey, we saw the announcement, very excited. Was curious if you could confirm whether or not you're involved. And he sent me back a very quick, we'll see. I don't know. I guess I can maybe read between the lines. I feel like that's him just neither confirming nor denying, but it makes me hopeful that it's not a negative response. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I feel like it'd be easy to say, no, not going to be a part of this one.
Yeah. It would be so dumb. It would be so dumb to do that movie and to not realize that he is an integral part of it.
Oh yeah. He's half.
So.
half of
I got to sneeze. Keep it in.
Yeah. So I just wanted to let any of our wonderful listeners that are making it this far in the film know that it's now time for our mostly horror recommendations of the week. Sean, you want to take yours first?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. I finally watched the movie What We Do in the Shadows. Finally.
Nice. Nice.
It's been a long time coming, but I finally watched it last night or 2 nights. Last night, I think. And
nice.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's so fun.
It's so good. We're werewolves, not swearwolves.
Yeah.
That's a great line.
There's so much fun stuff in it. They, just clearly know the vampire subgenre super well, and there were lots of little nods and things like that made me laugh. And this isn't to put the movie down, but I've just heard that they really figure themselves out in the show, and
I think the show's even better.
That the show is just solid. So I'm really excited to jump into that. I'm weird. I know that I could have done the show without the movie, but as I've said before, I'm just, something in me doesn't let me do that. So now I can do the show, and I'm excited. But that's my rec is if you haven't seen What We Do in the Shadows, the movie, do that. And I'm finally catching up. So.
That's great. Yeah, Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement are wonderful for creating that, and they still have their fingerprints all over the TV show, even though the people that are in the TV show have just absolutely made it their own. And it's so good. One of the best shows on TV right now. My recommendation is a film from 1996. It's the movie Fargo. And I actually don't know how it came up, but Sydney a couple nights ago was just like, have you ever seen the movie Fargo? And I was like, yeah, it's like it's like a masterpiece. And she was like, yeah, I saw something about the TV show and blah, 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 blah. And like, I think maybe we'll watch a TV show or something. And I was like, let's just watch it. It's like a 90-minute film. And it really just is one of, I wrote this in my Letterboxd, like kind of diary log of it, but it is like minute for minute one of the best films, like in terms of like great shit per minute in the movie, because it's such a tight 93 or whatever it is. it's an absolute classic in the Coen brothers filmography, which is like a really long list of wonderful films. It's, Frances McDormand, a young Frances McDormand playing this really like nuanced Minnesotan character, or South North Dakotan character, Steve Buscemi, a young
The
Steve
Boosh.
Buscemi, playing a character that Steve Buscemi is kind of just honed in on throughout the course of his career. You got fucking John Carroll Lynch, who pops in as Frances McDormand's husband for a bit. And then you got William H. Macy, who if I wouldn't have seen his name in the opening credits, knowing that I mostly like think of him for Shameless,
Yeah,
I probably wouldn't
Frank.
have said, "Oh, that's William H. Macy."
You wouldn't even recognize him.
He's so, but you do, like, when you go, "Oh, that's William H. Macy." Of course it is, but it's just it's so funny to think that he's playing that role when you know him for what you know him for in Shameless. So
Right.
it's just a classic. It's a quick one. If any of you guys have Max, you should watch it. Although when I did put it on, it had a weird black bar across the screen, not like a letterbox bar, but it was like an extra thin bar at the really top. And so I had to watch my Blu-ray, and that's why you buy physical media. But yeah, Fargo, absolute smasher, 10 out of 10. That's my recommendation. And I'm also seeing 2 movies this weekend, which I'm very excited about. Seeing Priscilla tonight, and then seeing The Killer tomorrow, which I know is out on Netflix now, but it's the new David Fincher film. And I would rather watch it in the theater if I can. So that's
I saw you really quick. I saw you tweeting recently about him confirming that like Mindhunter is just never going to happen.
Fucked.
And
fucked up.
I saw him talking about it like a year ago,
basically
saying the same thing, but it just having that nail slammed further in is just
once a year he makes something or produces something and does press junkets, and people ask him about it, and he just furthers. It's fucked. Mindhunter is amazing, and it's an absolute shame that they probably will never make anything else. Luckily,
not probably, dude. He said no.
I mean, they won't. I mean, never say never. If you get offered a bag, like who knows what can happen. But I'm also excited to watch new Fincher, because the last time I saw one of his films was, his last new film was during COVID. Sydney and I went to New Jersey to see Mank, which was not my favorite. It's my least favorite Fincher film, and was just a passion project for him. But this is one of his first Netflix films that he's doing, and super, super excited. So that's my rec of the week. I think that's all I got for you this week. If you're listening and you've seen What We Do in the Shadows, the TV show or the movie, if you're a fan of David Fincher or Fargo or the Coen brothers, or if you've seen Walden, let us know. Send us an email, mostlyhorrormovienight@gmail.com. We also have a Twitter and a TikTok that is @mostlyhorror, and our Instagram is @mostlyhorrorpod. I'm everywhere at Steven is Average. Sean's on all the socials at Hypocrite Inc. or Hypocrite.inc. And also, because this episode will release soon, I want to, it'll release around the time that this is happening. I want to give a pre-congratulations to our pod mother, fairy pod mother, Ash, who is getting married. Very excited to share in that joyous moment with them.
About to
coming
get
up next weekend.
Weird on the dance floor. Let's go. Let's go.
On that note, that is all we got for you this week. We will catch you next time.
Goodbye.